Сцена майбутнього, так називається головна тема Конгресу культури у Львові у 2021 році, тож не дивно, що студія, в якій ми сьогодні працюємо, називається «Вартові Галактики», адже сюди ми запрошуємо тих людей, які стоять на варті культури в Україні і загалом у всьому світі. Я нагадую, що слухати нас ви можете на сторінках онлайн-радіо «Сковорода», ну а дивитися відеотрансляції на офіційній сторінці та офіційному ютуб-каналі America Київ. І до цього в нас в гостях були представники-представниці української культури, а зараз я з радістю вітаю у нашій студії одного з головних гостей Конгресу культури, соціолога культури та урбаніста Паскаля Гілена. Nice to see you in this studio.
Hello.
You had an inspirational speech this morning, and you started Congress of Culture. And I would like to mention 3 points I noted during your speech. You spoke about culture and interacting among people during and after the pandemic conditions. And but the name of your presentations was Urban Intimacy. Mm-hmm. So please explain why this kind of intimacy is so important for us.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I can first explain what urban intimacy is about. It's not a concept of mine. It's from a sociologist, Alan Bloom, an urban sociologist. And he points with this concept of urban intimacy exactly to the relationships between intimate and anonymity. Yeah, so in between. So it are not close friendships, and it are not just professional relationships or relationships you have with anonymous people in public space. It is something in between. And I think exactly a theater or even also a museum, a cinema, are the typical places where you can have this kind of interaction with strangers. Which you don't know, you even maybe don't like, but you share an interest, for example, looking at a film, looking at a theater piece, and from that starting point on, you trust each other. It's a very thin trust, but it is one, because you share a kind of interest, and that makes people have the feeling of togetherness, being together, being collective. It can even stimulate the feeling of social cohesion, but at least for me it's a very important feeling which disappeared with the pandemic, with COVID-19, because it was criminalized. Yeah, it was impossible to have this kind of relationships, and they are very important, I think, to, for example, to make new friendships. It is really you can bridge to the intimate space, but you can stay also anonymous. And I think this bridging function is very important in intimacy. But it is also, this urban intimacy is also very important for cultural transition, to learn culture, to get involved in a kind of tradition. You need also this space, this shared space of trust. For example, just to show your emotions when you look at the theater piece, being enthusiastic, crying or whatever. You don't do this normally in public. So you do this only when you trust the people around you who are together with you interested in it. And this is this specific atmosphere, I call it, of urban intimacy.
Yeah, you call these spaces like semi-public spaces. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the places or situations where you have this common choice to stay anonymous or to interact with other people. Mm-hmm. How do you think after the pandemic, when we, let's say, we'll come back, but we will be different from mm-hmm. us previous. Will these semi-public places and spaces play the same role as before the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Maybe first of all, I came up with the idea of the semi-public space because of the pandemic. I was trying to find out what do we miss, what is going wrong, and what is exactly then the value, not only of theaters, etc., but also cafe, pubs, kind of semi-public spaces. So they are also a cafe it's public, it's open to the public, but at the same time it's a private space. And this in between is a very important place. And to relate to your questions, what will happen after the pandemic? I'm a little bit afraid that the pandemic worked as a catalyst for digital relationships, digital meetings, etc. People know, for example, more and more ask me also to do digital lectures, going to a digital conference, online conferences, to have online meetings. I think this would be a quite problematic evolution, because you exactly miss something goes wrong in digital communication, and that is exactly the visceral, the physical nearness you need to build up trust with somebody. So I had, for example, meetings where there was conflict in the meeting digital. It never gets solved. The reason why it never gets solved, the conflict, is because there is no moment after the meeting that you can talk with each other, and that you can also, but also that you really have the visceral aspect of it. So, and this is, I think, really important to remember. I think that this is the value of civil spaces. Semi-public spaces.
Thank you very much. I would like to add that even after cinema or after theater, you would like to get your friends and go to some pub or coffee shop just to discuss what you've seen before. And yes, this is really important. And the pity is that previously this online broadcasting and everything was like an extra, like a bonus for other people, but the point was to gather together, to communicate, to find some answers for different questions. Well, you mentioned trust. In your opinion, as a cultural sociologist and urbanist, is the trust during and after the pandemic still alive?
There's still trust, but again, there also, I think the pandemic had a enormous influence on. It worked like the catalyst for distrusting. Also, because of the pandemic, of course, you could get ill by being together. So there was a kind of I think a growing paranoia. And what I thought also what is interesting is you saw also people who felt quite comfortable with that, because now they don't need to have social contacts anymore. So you had both sides. You had people who get quite depressed because they had not this kind of semi-public space where you can have this experience of urban intimacy. And you had the other way, people who really defended this kind of way, and they also still want to have digital meetings, digital courses in the university, for example, etc. So the discussion is still going on. But again, I think to build up trust, and this is not a new thing, they know it also in business, for example. If you want to build up international business relationships, you need to meet each other physically, because otherwise you cannot build up trust. So what I want to stress is trust is not only just like urban intimacy. It's not only something which has to do with symbolic conventions. What I mean by that is it's not just only things you do in words, by naming it. It is really in looking at somebody's face, in the eyes. It has to do with the whole body language, etc. So, and this is where you build up trust with each other, and sharing interests. Talking about a concept like urban intimacy, for example, gives a kind of common ground to stand on, and that's the starting point to build up trust relationships. So I think trust relationships are damaged, and especially again when we think that we also can build up digital trust relationships, I think it's a huge failure. It's a huge mistake. That you can do that.
Yeah, it could be a bonus, but it cannot be a general way. Okay, thank you. And what I paid attention to was that during your speech, you often repeated that not about understanding and rationalization and so on, but about feelings. So did the pandemic show us that feelings are not at the same level of rationalistic and everything, but maybe even more important for people?
Yeah, I see it more in a phenomenological sense, in that sense that emotions, of course, are very important, and we describe this a little bit, and it's my colleague Marlies de Munk who describes it in the small booklet Nearness, when she describes that during the pandemic, for example, we had this kind of alternative digital parties or aperitivo at 5 o'clock. You put on Skype or whatever, and then you had a drink. But it completely failed. After 15 minutes, you were tired of it, and you closed the computer. So it didn't work. So what was there missing? Again, it's not the talking with each other, because with Skype you could perfectly, mostly of the time, talk with each other, but it is literally the physical nearness. It is the feeling of really the affection. So it is, and I make also a distinction between affection and emotion. Emotion is something you can realize or you can rationalize. Affection comes from deeper. It's something you cannot foresee. It's a typical way. I'm such a guy who always. It's a when I see a kitschy film or whatever, I start crying. I'm typical.
Oh, I feel you.
I have no control over that. And that's affection. It comes really from the inside, and you lose control in it. And I think to dare to lose control is a typical condition to make trust in a semi-public space again. So this is everything can roll then, and that's the figure of it.
Yeah, because you are a scientist, it's really important to hear it from you as a evidence-based informator. Next one, I noted, and it sounds really interesting. What does it mean? Urban erotic gaze.
It's a concept of feminist politicist Young. I forgot her first name, sorry, family name is Young. And she describes this as I can better explain by an example. When you go on a city trip somewhere, you are very curious to the city, and when you walk in the street, you always want to see what is around the corner. And this is what she describes as the erotic gaze, because it is a gaze which is curious. For things and it's also open for the new, for the adventure. Let's say it like that. Can be also small adventures, and this is also, of course, the typical feelings you have when you, for example, go to a party and maybe there's always a chance that you fall in love from somebody. That's why it's called also erotic. You are open for people, etc. And this openness is an erotic gaze, what she called. And I confront this. It's not what she does. I make this of it. I see it in contrast with what I call the xenophobic gaze. The xenophobic gaze is the gaze of people who are fear from the other, who want to avoid the strange, and they have the opposite relationship to strangers in the city, for example, etc. So it is really the opposite of this whole pandemia of fear nowadays. A lot of people also in very nationalist and even extreme right positions, also politicians cultivate this fear, this xenophobic gaze, and I try to counterposition that by stimulating more and more the erotic gaze. And again, I think culture plays a very important role in this, and artists also, because they make you curious. They are trained to do this. They have the talent to do this, to make you curious what they do on stage, but also in the street. And also, yesterday evening I was walking in Lviv in the city, and there were street musicians. That's what I mean. People are curious, they are looking, and they are also respectful. They stay quiet to listen, they stay quiet for each other. So immediately you have this kind of condition of a semi-public space, in public space, where you have this feeling of feeling safe. But it starts all with this openness. Oh, what is he or what is she doing? That is something I think we are losing. And coming back to online digital, we are losing this enormously there, because we all know by algorithms online, you only, at a certain moment, you only look, you get tunnel vision. You only look for already the expected in music, in theater, whatever. And that's used different with the erotic gaze, because when you go in semi-public spaces, but also in public space, you can always be confronted with something completely different. And that's the main difference, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that in 2020 in the Netherlands, they made a small research among urban citizens during the pandemic, and they realized that it's much more easier to make a person radical, let's say in right radical moods and so on, when this person, he or she, is sitting home and using only these digitalized instruments to communicate. So yes, these semi-public spaces and culture and this erotic gaze and everything is really important to like cultivate diversity, inclusiveness, and so on. But you mentioned that you had a walk yesterday around the city, and you are in Lviv as one of main guests of the Congress of Culture. So what was your, like, not professional but personal reason to visit Lviv, to visit Ukraine during such a scary pandemic times?
First of all, that's the professional reason. I get the invitation, of course, to come. Maybe it is my erotic gaze. I'm always curious to go in other cities, etc. I miss this also. I also traveled for almost 2 years, not anymore. The first time I took an airplane again was a month ago to go to the Dnipro, also in Ukraine. And I was very keen just to get away. And why I personally need this is literally that I write my books on airplanes and in airports and in hotels. Not really maybe write them full, that's something I do at home, but to have new ideas, it always happens there. Because it's a moment when you don't have to do anything else, and you can't even do anything else. And that's very helpful. And then walking through a city which you don't know yet, it really stimulates this kind of creative process. So I do it really for egoistic reasons for myself. It is really kind of feeding, and it's not so much people say that, yeah, you meet other people, other cultures, and it inspires you. Yes, it is. But it's not really that only. It is really having the space for your own to open your mind, and that you really don't need to do. I don't have to answer mails for a moment. It's very important. And at home you always can answer mails or something like that. In an airplane you can't. And then when you're walking in the street also you can't. So you can, then something happens what is called sympendempsia or something, sympendempia they call it. It's a kind of, you make very strange associations. And there the creativity starts. So it's really this moment. But it has to be it has to do with a feeling of time, that you have your own time. That's maybe important, and your own rhythm. to follow, so that you are not disturbed by mails or whatever, phone calls, and so on. And this is inspiring. By the way, Viv is, I've seen not so much, only 2 hours in the night yesterday, and today 1 hour. But yeah, it's of course fantastic city. It's really amazing. I only saw until now quite a historical part, but yeah, it's really alive. And I like also when you compare it with Kiev or Dnipro or Kharkiv, where I was, it's amazing how one nation has so many different cultures already, or different, and that's also, it's something you cannot point at in words, but you feel this, that it is an atmosphere, for example, in the city.
I hope that Institute of Cultural Strategy will present you English version of the book East-West Street. This is about history of Lviv and a contribution which our city made to the whole world. But here we must make 3 points and put our conversation on pause. I hope that we will have possibilities and opportunities to continue. But now I say thank you to you.
Thank you.
Це була справді дуже крута розмова. Я сподіваюся, що ми прикрасимо її українськими субтитрами. Я нагадую, що проект «Вартові Галактики» відбувається у межах Конгресу Культури у Львові і організований онлайн-радіо «Сковорода» і Америка Хаус Львів. Усі думки, які ви тут чуєте, є нашими приватними думками і в жодному разі не відображають жодну офіційну позицію. Побачимося за 10 хвилин.